Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NJBIA Live from the State Capitol. I'm Vinny Civitello, Communications Manager for the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. With us today from our Government Affairs Department are Chrissy Buteas and Frank Robinson. A few housekeeping matters before we get started. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you tomorrow along with the PowerPoint for today's presentation, so be on the lookout for those. If you just can't wait, you can download them right now from the Handouts tab. I'd also like to draw your attention to the Questions tab. Chrissy and Frank would be happy to take all of your questions, so don't hesitate to write them in as they come to you. And I can't stress that enough. Write them in as they come to you, or you may forget what you wanted to ask by the time we get to the Q&A. Also, So with all that out of the way, let's get things started. Chrissy?
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today to go over a review of what's been going on in Trenton. I am pleased to be joined by my colleague, Vice President of Government Affairs, Frank Robinson. And our goal here this morning is to really just give you a quick update on some of the things that have been happening in Trenton this past year and what we can expect heading into 2019. We want to keep things, casual and try to have a little bit of a conversation with you, and hope that you ask us some questions after our presentation, because I can guarantee we probably won't cover everything, but it's certainly a goal that we're going to strive to achieve. So with that, we're hoping to just jump right into the bulk of our presentation this morning. So 2018 in review. I think everybody who's been following all of NJBIA's correspondence and reading the newspaper has known there's been a lot of things going on under our Gold Dome here in Trenton. A lot of different policies moving forward now that we have Governor Murphy concluding his first year in office, joined by Senate President Steve Sweeney and Speaker Craig Coughlin in the Assembly. And some of the things that really kind of jumped out of the gate early in the year were mandatory equal pay legislation, which has gone into effect. And actually, this is one of the strictest equal pay laws in the country with some hefty fines. So we just want to remind our employers out there that this is in fact law here in New Jersey, and NJBIA was successful in working with legislative sponsors to cut down the look-back period in this legislation. But we just want to remind everybody that this law is in fact in effect right now, and we're happy to provide you with some specifics regarding some of the specifics in the legislation. Additionally, we had some mandatory paid sick leave legislation go into effect. And again, NJBIA did work with legislative sponsors to reduce the amount of time that an employee can take paid sick leave down from 72 hours to 40 hours. And right now, the Department of Labor is seeking comment on their proposed regulations to the paid sick leave law. So if you're interested in commenting on those regulations, please send us your feedback or submit comments yourself directly to the Department of Labor.
Hi, it's Frank. I just wanted to remind everyone that the 42 pages of proposed regulations by the Department of Labor are up on the NJBIA website. So just go to njbia.org. You can see those proposed regs. You can directly send your comments to the department, or you can send them to us here at NJBIA. And the comment period is closing this Friday. So if you do have the opportunity, take a look and let us know what you think.
All right. Well, thank you, Frank. State budget. I know you've heard a lot about the state budget from us here at NJBIA. We talked a lot about what was going on during the June timeframe with Governor Murphy and the Senate President and Speaker Coughlin. And really where we round up, for those just who may have forgotten, but let's just do a quick reminder. The state has imposed an increase in the corporate business tax, and we are happy to see that that will be phased out. But again, an increase in the corporate business tax. And actually, going into the fall, the legislature did do another bill related to the corporate business tax, which actually changed some of our GILTI provisions. And for those who might not be familiar with GILTI, it's global intangible low taxed income, which really does have an impact on our corporations. So that was really the big issue around the budget in June. So Frank, I don't know if you have anything you want to add on the budget.
Of things. The budget this year is about, in the current fiscal year, which started July 1st, is about $900 million more than fiscal year 18. But one little fact that people don't realize is that our budget is not $34.7 billion. It's really closer to $55 billion. New Jersey receives about $20 billion from the federal government. And it's not included as our official budget because our official budget is paid for with state revenues, but our unofficial budget has about $20 billion in federal spending, and that includes money for transportation, for health care. We get a pretty decent chunk of money out of the federal government for Medicaid. And so we spend a lot of money here in New Jersey. And as we always say here at BIA, the problem is not revenue, problem is spending. And we have to look at the spending. If I might, I just want to point out that this past Friday, last Friday, we had our annual public policy forum, and we had the leaders of the legislature do the TV show with NJTV and Mike Aaron on the record, and we talked about the budget and we talked about spending. And one of the things that we were happy to hear from the Senate's president and the Assembly Speaker was that their intent, they would prefer not to raise any taxes in the next budget that's coming up. Governor will give his budget address in the end of February. Legislature will, in quotes, take a break during the spring, review the governor's proposal, and then, as we all know, constitutionally, we have to have a budget passed by June 30th. And we're going to be working very hard this year to make sure that no taxes or new fees are instituted in the budget. It's one of NJBIA's main priorities for the entire year, and it's actually our main priority when it comes to the state budget.
Great, thanks, Frank. So, let's see what's going on currently. I think you've all been hearing a lot about discussion around a $15 minimum wage. We've been hearing from our members about this for years, as we've known that this has been a priority of not just Governor Murphy, but also of our legislative leaders as well. And the $15 minimum wage was actually scheduled to be up for a vote on Monday, but due to a death of a family member on the committee, the hearing was canceled. We haven't heard of a rescheduled date as of yet, but we do anticipate the minimum wage bill being considered again by the legislature probably early in 2019. If you haven't had a chance to review the bill, some of the key parts that we want to make sure we point out to you is that it won't be $15 overnight. It'll be a gradual increase, which is the proposal right now, from $9.50 an hour for most workers in 2019, and then jumping up to $15 by 2024. There is an exemption for some seasonal and farm workers and for small businesses with 10 or fewer employees, where they would take even a more gradual increase to get to 15, and the proposed date right now is of 2029. Again, this is really early on in the stage of development for legislation. The bill has not been considered by either house in the legislature, as I've mentioned, but certainly going to be a priority for our legislative leaders and our governor moving into 2019. NJBIA has, still very many concerns with this piece of legislation. We can go through some of those, which include, taking into account what will happen for our Medicaid providers, who received a fixed amount of revenue and reimbursement from our state. What will happen with our nonprofit community, etc. And all of these things are very important for the legislature to consider as they take a very holistic look at the impacts of increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So we'll keep you posted on this. I encourage you to join our minimum wage task force, and Mike Wallace, our vice president here at BIA, heads up that coalition. We'd be more than happy to add you to our efforts. We also encourage you to reach out to your lawmaker if you have concerns about a $15 minimum wage. And Frank, I know you want to chime in here.
Well, one of the things that I found very interesting this past Friday at a public policy forum, when this was discussed with the four leaders, is that Senator Sweeney said we must be doing something right because nobody likes the bill. And that's from the left and the right. The progressives wanted progressive people in the state wanted a $15 an hour minimum wage for everyone in a much faster schedule than the bill introduced by the speaker, which, by the way, is A15, if anybody is looking on the legislature's website for the bill, A15, sponsored by Speaker Coughlin. This version has not been introduced in the Senate yet, I don't believe, and that Senator Sweeney and the Senate Democrats are letting the Assembly Democrats take the lead at this point in time. The governor is not thrilled with this version of the bill because he thinks that there's too many, in quotes, carve-outs, and also that the time frame is too long because it could take up to 10 years for certain members of the general population to reach that $15 an hour. Also, in addition, we are very, very concerned here at NJBIA over the compression issue, which we have been historically when it comes to minimum wage. And I'm sure most of you realize that compression is that someone's making $15 an hour now, and their coworkers are being raised up from the minimum wage, which is currently $8.60, to that $15 an hour. So when's my big raise coming? This is a 67% increase, I believe, maybe even a little higher in the minimum wage. And so if I'm making $15 an hour, when am I getting that big percentage raise? So that we're very, very concerned of the effect, especially on small business, but on all businesses. And last but not least, the component of whatever happens with minimum wage that BIA has been talking about is the whole issue of workforce skills and career pathways. Is that we don't think anybody should be making minimum wage in the state of New Jersey. Everyone should have a skill set that comes through our educational institutions, through our business training, to raise everybody up. I mean, there are huge numbers of unfilled jobs, not only in New Jersey, but in America, because people don't have, especially the middle level wage skills. There was a report this morning on CBS Radio out of New York that there are 7 million unfilled jobs in America. There are tens of thousands of unfilled jobs here in the state of New Jersey because of the skill set. So we're asking the governor and the Senate president and the speaker to include a rededication to raising the skill levels of potential employees in New Jersey.
Thank you, Frank. Some important points you definitely mentioned were around the slow and steady increase in the minimum wage, and that's something BIA has been asking for and working to advocate on behalf of the business community for over quite a number of years. So we'll continue to stress that that's incredibly important to the business community, as well as some of the exceptions, as well as the workforce development aspect that Frank mentioned. We continuously hear from our lawmaker, or from our members, that they have jobs and they can't find the workforce right now to fill those jobs. So it's incredibly important that workforce development and compression costs are a key part of this conversation as the bill moves through the legislature, and we will certainly keep you all informed as that takes place in the new year. And I'm sure everybody has heard a lot of conversation in the state around what's going on with the legalization of recreational marijuana as well as medicinal marijuana. And right now, the legislature has been meeting to discuss both of these topics, as well as expungement for those who have been incarcerated because of drug offenses. So NJBIA has been really working hard in securing amendments to this legislation to make sure that employers have the ability to maintain drug-free workplaces. And so, again, making sure that that provision is in both the recreational marijuana piece of legislation as well as the medicinal legislation. And we are pleased to see that they are in both. This legislation has come out of committee, but has not been posted yet for consideration by the full Senate or the full Assembly. There is still some disagreement among the governor and the legislature on how much to tax recreational marijuana, so we anticipate this conversation continuing through the holidays and into the new year. Frank mentioned a lot of conversation about job shortages and the need for more workers, and apprenticeships have been a priority of what NJBIA has been talking about with our legislature. We were pleased to see $10 million in the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network, and there are other pieces of legislation moving through the legislature at this time that really go to trying to address this issue that's facing the state. So we've been very supportive of initiatives to make sure that apprenticeship programs are moving forward, and I know our manufacturing caucus here at NJBIA has been a lead proponent in encouraging this type of policy, and we've been encouraged by working with both the Department of Labor as well as our Secretary of Higher Education to make sure that these types of initiatives continue to move forward.
Yeah, we're very encouraged, it's Frank Robinson again, that the governor is really spending a lot of time and energy on this issue, because he does understand that we need to have a well-trained workforce. And he's also, I mean, they're coordinating the work of the Department of Labor, the Department of Education, as Chrissy mentioned, and also they have the commissioner, the secretary of the Office of Higher Education very involved in this also. And in the past, there's been misconceptions among our members, and I've heard it for years, that apprenticeships are really geared towards labor unions. In the past, that was true because, quite frankly, especially the building trades were very, very good at running apprenticeship programs. The carpenters, especially the IBEW, the electric workers. But this is now extending it to a lot of non-union fields, including healthcare, accounting, other financial management, and service-oriented jobs. So we're very encouraged by this. And BIA is very involved in a program that the state EDA has gotten a grant from the federal government on, and it's called the Manufacturing Policy Academy, which is coming up with programs to help figure out the right pathways for people to go into the manufacturing sector, of which we still have over 250,000 jobs here in New Jersey. We do make things in New Jersey. You may not see the big steel plants or automobile plants anymore, but we make a lot of the components that go into the Defense Department spending, into the automobile industry. We make a lot of widgets here in New Jersey. We also still make a lot of chemicals. And so this whole policy academy over the course of the next year is going to come up with a whole program on how to reinvigorate a lot of the new advanced manufacturing techniques and jobs, and we will keep you up to date on that. And we hope to, as I say, get very involved in apprenticeship programs for advanced manufacturing.
And just before we head to answer any questions that might have come up, I do want to say that we've been pleased to be joined by one of our colleagues here, Mike Wallace, who handles all of our labor initiatives here at BIA, as well as workforce development and education. But a couple of things that I wanted to mention before we switch over to answering questions. We're also really excited to be working with both the governor on his innovation plan that he rolled out probably mid-year, and some of the proposals there to return New Jersey back to its innovation state that it once was, and again, a core vision and mission of us here at NJBIA, as well as working with the Senate President on his Path to Progress plan, which really calls for addressing our structural budget challenges. And as you know, NJBIA has been a long-time advocate of making sure that the state is on sound fiscal footing. So therefore, it's just we're better equipped to face the challenges of tomorrow and address things such as our infrastructure and our education needs, healthcare needs. And so we look forward to working with both the governor and the Senate President on their respective initiatives. And we see those as major priorities for both of them going into 2019. So with that, I think we'll pause and see if we have any questions from any of our listeners.
Thanks, Chrissy. We actually have a question here already, but I want to give everyone else a moment to type in anything they have. While I'm doing that, I'd like to take a second to remind you about the Handouts tab. We get a lot of questions from people about how to download the slides. So just open up the tab marked Handouts in your GoToWebinar panel, and the file is right there. You can also just wait until tomorrow, and they'll be emailed to you along with the video recording of the webinar. And there's the Questions tab. If you have a question, type it in right there, and I'll make sure our guests answer it. And don't be shy. You've got 3 experts here, so make sure to take advantage of them. Can't tell you how many times I read the post-webinar evaluations and see someone disappointed that a relevant topic wasn't covered, that the webinar wasn't broad enough, that it was too in the weeds. This is your opportunity to make the webinar your own and take it in whatever direction you'd like. So anyway, with all of that out of the way, our first question comes from Brendan, who asks, do you see the potential for any additional carve-outs from the $15 minimum wage?
I'll take that then. And Brendan, thank you for the question. As you're aware, the speaker introduced his bill recently, which did include some exemptions or exceptions whereby certain industries and employees would be phased into that $15 at a slower rate than everyone else. Over the course of the last year and a half, the Senate President did mention or has mentioned certain other exemptions that he wanted to see in the bill as well. So we are hopeful that the legislature would consider some additional exceptions. NJBIA does feel that the proposal that we have in front of us today does not go far enough in this regard. So we will be working on getting further exceptions as well.
Christine would like to know if there's been any litigation around the Pay Equity Act.
Christine, thanks for that question. To our knowledge, there has not been any litigation filed in New Jersey regarding the pay equity law that went into effect July 1st of this year.
Okay. Greg asks, Newark is one of 4 cities worldwide to offer free Wi-Fi and charging stations throughout the city. Do we think New Jersey will expand this to other cities, the shore, etc.?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Not completely sure if the state as a whole will do that, but I think what we are seeing is a lot of discussion in the legislature now when you refer to at least electric vehicles specifically. A move by the legislature and a recognition around the challenges of climate change and how electric vehicles will assist with addressing it through through the transportation sector. With that being said, though, the question becomes, how is the state going to roll out those charging stations, and will they be offered for free? How will they be placed and such? So nothing specific that we've been hearing right now, but certainly legislation is under consideration on how to offer electric vehicle charging stations throughout the state.
Gordon asks, any feedback on S2528 changes to New Jersey TDI and PFL for 1217 vote? And if you guys don't know what S2528 is off the top of your head, I won't, Gordon asks. No, we'll come back to that one. So, or we can get back to you offline. An update from Christine's question. She was asking about, in addition to the pay equity, if one employee receives an employer contribution towards benefits, should an employee who does not need the benefit receive an equivalent dollar consideration? So I'm guessing, like, if somebody gets health benefits and somebody else doesn't need health benefits, should they get, like, the monetary equivalent of said health benefits? By law, I guess we're saying, yeah.
Thank you for the question, Christine. What we would love to do is be able to contact you offline to have a conversation with you and refer you to our fast facts. So we'll reach out to you offline.
Awesome. Sorry. So S2528 is the family leave bill. So let me go back to that one. Any feedback on S2528 changes to New Jersey TDI and PFL for a 1217 vote?
So at this point, the last action that was taken on that bill were some amendments that passed out of the Senate, actually on the Senate floor in early November, I believe, or late October. There has not been any scheduled vote on that bill in December to this point, either in the Senate or the Assembly. The bills at this point are not identical. So there's still more work to be done on that piece of legislation.
Okay. Greg asks, will New Jersey DOBI be passing legislation to protect New Jersey fully insured group health plans from self-insurance cherry picking of healthy groups only?
Greg, thanks for the question. As you know, we continuously hear from our members that the rising cost of health insurance premiums is a premier concern. At this point in time, there is no legislation that we're aware of, but again, happy to speak with you offline because we definitely recognize some of the challenges our members have faced with the rising cost of health insurance.
Okay, well, that looks like all the questions we have, so I think it's as good a time as any to bring things to a close. Don't forget, all of you will be receiving a recording of today's webinar and the PowerPoint slides via email. Lastly, when you close out of the webinar, a survey will come up on your screen that we hope you'll fill out so we can understand how to best provide you important information in a webinar format. Our next webinar, The Art of Delegation, will take place Wednesday, January 16th. So by all means, feel free to register for that one on our website at njbia.org. So until next time, for Chrissy Buteas, Mike Wallace, and Frank Robinson, this is Vinny Civitello thanking you for being with us this morning and wishing you a good day.